And we are live, I guess. Hello, everybody. I hope you're all well. Please let me know in the chat that you can see and hear us well. If everything's all right with the broadcasting, I'm going to check. Hello. 1, 2, 3. Waiting for people to join. Please let us know if everything is all right. Okay, people are still waiting, I guess. Don't be shy. Drop us a line. We need to make sure that everything works well. Okay, still nothing. Can anyone please reply to me? Hello. Finally, we're getting comments. I hope everything is all right. Rita, hello. I'm really glad that everything is all right because at the beginning, the technical issues can come in the way. It's really important for us to know that everything is okay. Great. Thank you very much, Юлька, путешественница. We are glad that you can hear and see us well. Okay, good. Well, since you have already dropped us a line, can you please tell us where are you watching us from? I will start. My name is Maria, and I am talking from Porto, Portugal. Yeah. Okay, everything is all right and set. Well, let's do this little icebreaker. Don't be shy. It is very important for us to engage in the conversation right now because after each speech we're going to have a question and answer session, and you will have to type your questions in the comment section. Gleb from Tbilisi is writing to us. Welcome to dxTechTalk. We really hope you're going to have a wonderful time. Julka Putешественница is writing us from Germany. Wow, guten Tag. Ich hoffe, alles ist gut. Yeah, I really hope that everything is fine. Lisboa, Portugal, Romania, also from Porto. Yeah, one of our speakers is also from Portugal, so no wonder that there are a lot of people joining from this place. Batumi, also Georgia. Hello, welcome, Sergey. We're really glad to see you all here tonight. Serbia, welcome. It is so cool to see how wide our geography is, and yeah, it is kind of obvious that we're going to get more people from countries of our presence, like Georgia, Bulgaria, Portugal, and it's really a good thing because we have offline communities there. I'm going to talk about this a little bit later too. So yeah, it's really great to see everybody joining. Also, a vote from Hungary and another from Serbia. Well, welcome, Eastern European brothers and sisters. We really hope that you're going to have a wonderful time tonight. And also Poland, welcome. So I guess we can start. Thank you very much for sharing your location. Now we know where you live. Yeah, I'm talking about you, Amalia from Greece. Hello. So let's start. Hi, everyone. Once again, if you're joining us only now, my name is Maria, and I'm going to host this event. Welcome to dxTechTalk, a series of free tech meetups organized by international fintech company Devexperts. We specialize in the development of financial software solutions and services for the global capital markets industry. Our company has been founded in 2002 which means that we've been on the market for quite a long time. And we have R&D centers in Jersey City, USA, Porto, Vilnius, Munich, Dublin, Tbilisi, Sofia, and Istanbul. We launched this project, dxTechTalk, to be in touch with the tech community and share expertise in fintech and discuss our projects, technologies, and tools. We also have, as I have already said, tech communities in Portugal, Bulgaria, and Georgia, where we organize offline meetups. So we will be glad to see you in person. I know that there are many people joining from those locations. So even if you're not there, don't be sad, because usually we try to record presentations from offline events as well and share them here on this YouTube channel. So subscribe to our YouTube channel and check our previous videos from the offline meetups. We will be glad to see you there. And also, please follow us on social media, meetup.com, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn to stay in touch and learn about upcoming events. We will announce all events in our corporate profile, so if you've subscribed to one of them, you are already informed. So don't miss the opportunity. Today, we are going to talk about design. Today, we have a program of 2 talks, around 25 minutes each. After each session, we're going to have time for answering the questions. So if you have any questions already, or you will get any thoughts during the presentation, don't be shy to type those questions in the chat. And after the presentation, I'm going to read them aloud, and the presenter is going to answer them. Well, I guess everyone is ready to start. Without further interruption, I'm introducing the first speaker, Sergey, who is an interface designer with a background in full stack development. At Devexperts, he crafts interfaces for complex trading products. Sergey, the stage is yours.
Okay, hi everyone. Can you hear me well? Okay. I'm gonna share my screen now. And here we are. Okay. This full screen. Okay. Everything seems to be okay. Okay, let's get started. Hi, Maria. Thank you for having me today. Hi, everyone. And thanks for joining us. Before diving into prototyping, I'd like to share a bit about myself. I'm Sergey, an interface designer at Devexperts, and I've been designing and programming since 2010. Back then, I was a full stack developer, also taking care of the visual part, which was quite common at the time. And after a few years of being a one-man band, I realized that my favorite part of the process was design. So I decided to focus on it completely. Since then, I've worked on so many different projects. I designed websites, of course, created interfaces for touchscreen kiosks back when they were emerging, worked for a startup, building an ERP system, and even helped create a task manager for people with ADHD. At Devexperts, I design interfaces for complex trading platforms like our own product, dxTrade. And over the past year, I've been designing a trading platform from scratch. During this time, I developed a habit of prototyping in Figma. Through trial and error, I've gained a deep understanding of Figma's prototyping capabilities. And today I want to share how prototyping can enhance both your designs and your design process. My goal is to give you a quick crash course on Figma prototyping and to encourage you to use prototyping more often. Let's get started. Here's my plan. First, I will explain what a prototype is, why prototyping is valuable, and why Figma is a great tool for it. Then we'll look into what an interaction is. After that, we'll dive into the most exciting part, putting our knowledge to work by building a prototype. And finally, I will answer your questions. Okay, let me take a sip. Okay, let's dive in. Just in case, I'd like to start with a definition. An interactive prototype, or simply a prototype, is a realistic simulation of a design to demonstrate its behavior. Unlike static mockups, interactive prototypes allow users to experience how the product works, including transitions, animations, and without any coding. Prototyping offers many benefits, not just for us designers, but also for developers and stakeholders. Prototypes help us test screen flows and discover usability issues and identify edge cases early. Prototypes can also be helpful in user testing to gather insights and validate design decisions before development starts. Using prototyping, the team can quickly iterate on designs without writing any code, saving time and reducing costs. Prototypes can be a part of design specs, helping developers understand complex flows or animations, making sure the implementation matches the design. Prototypes can make our mockups feel almost like a real product, helping to present ideas in a more convincing and engaging way. So why do I think Figma is a good tool for prototyping? Well, the answer is very simple. If I already use Figma for design, why not use it for prototyping too? Prototyping is built right into Figma, and there's no need to switch to another app. Figma covers all my basic prototyping needs and even more. I was able to build most of my prototypes using simple techniques. It's easy to get started with Figma prototyping. I connect elements to each other, configure interactions, and it works. For simple flows, there's almost nothing to learn. Now let's look at what an interaction is. In Figma, an interaction is a connection between frames or component states. Interactions allow us to simulate how interface responds to user input. For example, when user is hovering over a button, it changes its color. An interaction consists of three key parameters: a trigger, an action, and animation. Let's break down each of them. Trigger is an action or event that starts an interaction. We have a bunch of triggers in Figma. I'll cover the most common ones. On-click is the most popular and straightforward trigger. It's used for anything that activates with a simple click. On-drag is used for sliders, carousels, as well as all kinds of swipe actions on mobile. While hovering is for hover effects like button highlights or tooltips. While pressing activates when the mouse button is held down. It's useful for press states and drag interactions. And after delay is a very powerful trigger. We can use it for splash screens, loaders, carousels, notifications, and interface tutorials. Next, we have action. An action is what happens when a trigger is activated. We have navigate to, a very common action to switch to another screen. Change to switches between component variants. We can use it for hover, press interactions, and for creating functional checkboxes, radio buttons, and toggles. Back action navigates to the previous frame and replicates a back button of a phone or a browser. Scroll to scrolls to a specific place within a frame. It simulates in-page navigation or anchor links. These three overlay actions are used for drop-down menus, pop-ups, and modals. Open overlay displays a frame on top of the current frame. Swap overlay replaces the current overlay with another one. It's useful for multi-step overlays. And close overlay is used for cancel or close buttons to dismiss an overlay. The last section contains actions with variables. We can use these to dynamically update content, to decrease the number of frames using other actions, and for everything else that's impossible to build entirely off of other actions. Later in the practice section, I'll show how I use these 5 actions. The third parameter is animation. By default, it's set to instant, which is no animation. I use animation when I want to visually enhance a transition. Smart Animate can be very handy because Figma detects changes between matching layers and creates an animated transition automatically. Now that we know some theory, let's put it into practice. In this section, I will be showing how I build a prototype. It's not going to be a 100% live prototyping because my goal was to make this part focused and informative as much as possible. So I pre-recorded the process to save time and avoid any technical hiccups. Okay, let me take another sip and let's start. Here's a simple mock-up of a to-do list app I've created. I added a search bar on top. Next, there's the name of the list and the number of tasks. I also have a sort button with some modes. The tasks can have a priority and a due date. And at the bottom, I have a button to create a new task. Let's start with the hover effect. This component has a default state and a hover state. I'll switch to the prototype tab and draw a connection between these variants. I'll set the trigger to while hovering, and I'll leave the animation as instant. I will repeat these steps for all hoverable components that I have here. When I work on a project, I build this simple interaction in my components from the very start, not just when I need to prototype something. I didn't include the press state in this example, but I usually add this state to my components as well as an interaction with the mouse down trigger. On mobile devices, hover interactions obviously don't exist, so it's even more important to include the press interaction there. These are the simplest component interactions, but they make a big difference. They instantly bring a static screen to life. Let's recap this part. I think it's the best practice to add the hover and press states as soon as you build the component. And I also create the press state and the interaction for touchscreen devices. For me, these two interactions are must-haves in a design system. Now I will make the checkbox interactive. Here I have an unchecked default state and a hover state, as well as the same two states for checked. The first approach that comes to mind is to simply connect the default unchecked state to the default checked state. Okay, let's try it. But it doesn't work like this. This interaction is a little bit tricky. I'm going to remove this connection. And the trick is not to connect the default state, but to connect the hover state instead. Okay, a quick check. Now it's working as expected. I need to draw one more connection to allow the checkbox to be unchecked also. Again, I'm connecting from the hover state. Check again. Perfect. To recap, checkbox interactions are a must-have for me too. They add a nice touch to the checkbox, and if I also create a press state, it will be much appreciated. I like to throw on some animation to make it look even nicer. Next, I'll be removing items. In the prototype, a task has a remove button on the right, and I'm going to make it functional. First, I need to expand the component frame because I'll be creating new variants. I'm selecting both hover states, holding the Shift key, then duplicating them by dragging while holding the Option key. Next, I'll rename these new variants to remove. Now I will switch to the prototype tab and delete the interactions that were copied along with the variants. I select the delete button and draw a connection to the newly created variant. I will repeat this step for the second pair of variants since we want to be able to delete both uncompleted and completed tasks. I'm setting the animation to Smart Animate because it will add a cool effect to this transition. Finally, I'll switch back to the Design tab, select the two new variants, and set their height and opacity to 0. Now let's check how it works. As I remove tasks, now I have a nice animation. Okay, this animated interaction of removing items is very popular on mobile apps, but I see it more and more often on desktop too. A nice short animation not only is visually pleasing, but it also acts as a useful feedback. Unfortunately, an interaction for adding items is nowhere as quick and easy to create. A drop-down list is a very common control. Here's how I make it interactive. This button should open a drop-down list. In my example, I have 3 options to sort the list of tasks: by due date, by date created, and by priority. I've prepared an additional 2 screens by changing the text in the select button and reordering the tasks according to the sorting option. Now I'm going to the prototype tab, selecting the first select button and selecting the other 2 while holding the shift key. I'm connecting all 3 buttons at the same time to the drop-down list. The trigger is already set to on-click. I'll set the action to open overlay, and I also make sure that I have close when clicking outside check. The position is set to manual, and now I need to position the drop-down lists individually for each screen. Unfortunately, I cannot do this for all screens at once. Then I'm going to connect each option from the drop-down list to its respective screen. The trigger is set to on-click, and the action is set to navigate to. A cool thing is that Figma can remember the state of your items along different screens. Here I'm completing some tasks, and they preserve their state as I'm switching between the sorting modes. How cool is that? Okay, let's recap. If you're building a drop-down list, make sure to turn on the close when clicking outside option. And if you want it to be a modal window, just turn it off. When I need to draw multiple connections, I always use multi-selection because it saves me a lot of time. And I really like this hidden feature. When I copy and paste items between screens, Figma preserves their states. Just make sure you don't add or remove them individually, as it will break this mechanism. Okay, let's move to a more advanced prototyping and try out variables. I have a task counter, but it doesn't work as I complete tasks. To make it work, I will use variables. This feature is not available on the free Figma plan. To open variables window, I deselect everything on the canvas, and there's a button in the design panel. There are 4 types of variables. I need a variable to store the number of tasks, so I select the number variable. I'll call it tasks and set it to 5, which is the number of tasks in my example. Now I'll assign my variable to the text layer. I'm command clicking the number 5 here to quickly select the layer. And here at the top, I'm clicking the apply variable button and choosing the variable from the list. Now I'll go back to the variables window to check if my connection works. And yeah, you can see that it works. And I will set it back to 5. Okay. Now I need to make my variable change. The counter should change as I complete the tasks. So I will update my click interaction between these 2 variants. I select the connection and add another action, which is set variable. I select my variable from the list and I set the value to that same variable -1 because I will be completing a task. Now I want to test if it works. Okay, perfect. The counter goes down as I check off tasks, but it doesn't go back up when I uncheck them. Let's update the interaction for unchecking. I select the check hovered variant, open the connection parameters, and add a new action to set variable. Again, I choose the same variable tasks, and this time I set this value to task +1 because I will be unchecking a task. And let's test again. Okay, now the counter works in both directions. Now I want to make my prototype even more advanced. When I complete all tasks, the counter shows 0, but let's imagine that I want to hide the counter instead. I need a new variable to do this. I'm opening my variables and creating a new one. Now it's a Boolean variable. I will call it show counter, and it will store if the counter is visible or not, true or false. And I will set it to true. Now I need to attach the variable to the counter. I select the counter layer, go to the appearance section, right-click this eye icon, and choose the variable show counter. Now that I have it attached, I need to add some logic for it. I'll open that same interaction that I've been using in the previous examples, and I will add a new action, which is the conditional. My condition is if the variable tasks equals 0, it's a double equals sign, I will add a set variable action. Okay, I select the set variable, select my show counter variable, and I will set it to false. This will hide the counter. And I need to add a similar condition to show the counter back again when I uncheck a task. Okay, I'm selecting this action, then conditional, and this time if tasks is greater than 0, then add action, set variable show counter to true. That's it. Let's test it. Okay, I'm checking all the tasks off my list, and the counter disappears. And when I uncheck them, it shows back again. Let's recap this section. I use variables when I need to dynamically change text based on the user input. I also use them to control the visibility of the state of elements that are logically connected to other elements. Some interactions are only possible to prototype with variables, while in other cases, they help me avoid creating multiple variants of screens for every possible state. Variables can take prototypes to a new level, making them more interactive and realistic. Okay, that's it with my example. You saw how I transformed a static mockup into a highly interactive prototype that feels quite realistic. Now I want to wrap it up with a quick summary. Prototyping is an essential part of the design process. It enhances usability testing and team communication. Figma seamlessly integrates design and prototyping. It's intuitive and capable of building complex prototypes. A prototype consists of interactions. To build an interaction, you need to set a trigger, some actions, and animation. By combining these, you can achieve a realistic interface experience. I recommend always adding basic component interactions as you're constructing your design system. These include hover, press states, and interactive checkboxes and toggles. Simple techniques can cover your basic prototyping needs. For more advanced prototypes, use variables and conditionals. I hope that you've learned something new from me, and I encourage you to create interactive prototypes more often and try some advanced techniques. And I'm sure you'll see how it improves your design process. Thanks for coming, and you're welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn. Thank you.
Thank you very much for such an insightful presentation with practically like live working demonstration. I really hope that everyone learned something new from your presentation. I have, because I'm not a designer. I know Figma only like a person who usually like goes on Figma and sees stuff to approve. Not as a person who does something there, but it is really interesting. And for me, it is exciting that you can create prototypes that already look like actual products. So it will be much easier to understand which product will the development team deliver. And as far as I understand, at the development stage, it is essential to work together with your prototype. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. And the best part is that you don't need to know any coding stuff. Well, like maybe 90% you don't need, but when you want to use variables and conditionals. So there are some very basic coding involved, but I think it's quite interesting for uh, some designers that, unlike me, like I came, my background is full stack development, so I used to work with this stuff, but I think it's very interesting to like to scratch the surface of coding by using some very basic coding stuff when you deal with the Figma variables.
Yeah, the background of a full stack developer really helps you put your developer hat back on and actually understand that developers and designers are not enemies and they work on the same thing. But we're going to talk about this in the latter part of our presentation. But we have a couple of questions that people ask in the chat. Guys, thank you very much for being so proactive. And the first one is from Mariana. How much time did it take to prototype these examples in real life?
Okay, maybe twice as much as I've demonstrated, but it's still very quick. Of course, like when you learn, it will take more time, but it's like it applies to everything that we're starting to learn. Now you have like on early stages, you need to invest some more time, some extra time to learn something, but then it will boost up your productivity. And so it's not a rocket science. So basically, it's still very quick. When it comes to variables, it will get a little bit time consuming, maybe in some cases, and sometimes you need to debug. But other than that, it's pretty quick. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, we really hope, Mariana, that we've answered your questions. Thank you very much. And this is not a question, but mostly a comment, but I would like to read it aloud because it's very nice. It's from Maxime. More valuable than many design courses, straight to the point, no fluff, and with practical examples you can start using right away. Thank you for such high quality content.
Thanks.
Yeah. Well, those thanks are not only to Sergey, but also to us. We are really, really meticulous about choosing the topics and preparing the presentations in order to make high quality content. And yes, thank you very much for giving such a wonderful feedback. Natalia is asking you a quick question. How do you organize the information about the prototype in the Figma sheet to share it with the developers?
Okay, usually if some part of spec has a prototype, I have a huge blue button saying run prototype, just in case developers not always are very like attentive to the details and they might miss when you can switch to the prototype mode and you see those play buttons for prototype. So I always make sure that I have this button. And if there is something, some details or some like special things about the prototype, I also make sure to include that in text in my spec. So I also make sure that my prototypes are not very complex. So if I have some, for example, complex flow, I prefer to divide it into more, easy to digest parts, and so that it's easy to understand by developers. Also, we have this practice of grooming sessions with the devs when I can myself demonstrate my prototype and explain how it works. So it's always the best way, but it's also more time consuming, of course, and it's a synchronous way of communication, but it also helps. So there can be like a synchronous way when you annotate and put there like a big button to run your prototype, or you can basically have a talk uh, with the devs to explain to them everything.
Or the combination of it will be a great option, actually, like sending the notes to get people acquainted with the material and then answer their question during the presentation, the demonstration session. It will be like the bulletproof process for negotiating these issues.
Yes, absolutely.
Another question for you from Nikita. Starting from what size of a feature does it make sense to develop a prototype?
As I've mentioned, I always add interactions for the most simple things like hovers, press states. I make checkboxes work and toggles and like so. This is by default when I build starting to build my design system. I by default add these things, and next uh, I ask myself if there's like a more complex flow or some animation, for example, then I want to make a prototype for this. Sometimes I first try to build a prototype to better understand the flow, and then I will make it an actual flow. So I'm designing the flow using the prototyping actually. So it can be also helpful. So you can just try to evaluate if the effect and the result of having a prototype is more than the time you will spend making it. So you should make this prototype. It's not always possible to evaluate this, of course. So you can just try with some simple things just to like get the hang of it. And then you will understand which parts require the prototype and which don't. From my experience, the most useful application of the prototypes was like very custom interface controls. So when we are having an idea of something very unique and we are not sure how it will work actually. So we want to try it like physically by clicking and everything like that. So this is the most impactful way of prototyping for like all the custom elements, and also for user testing. I can, for example, make a little prototype and show it to my colleague and ask them if it's clear what's happening or if it's not. Because using a static screen, it's not always possible to convey your idea and to ask your questions without telling too much, because you need user to think before they give you like a real answer, not based on your like hints. I hope this makes sense.
Yeah, it actually does. And yeah, sometimes it's better to show than to tell. And prototyping is a powerful tool that is going to help you fill this gap. We have two more questions, and I'm afraid we're going to be out of time by then. So if you have any more questions, please feel free to go on Sergey's LinkedIn and ask those questions in the DMs. And as he has already said, he is open for communication and will answer those questions as well. But for now, we have two last questions. I am terribly sorry if I am pronouncing your name in a wrong way. This is Manka Vidmar, and they are asking, is it possible to convert Figma prototype into code, HTML or CSS? What is the fastest way if you also want to do full stack development after prototyping in Figma?
There's no way, like a one button way to convert a prototype into something, but you can use some parts. If you switch to the dev mode, you can have some parameters, and the devs can use these to actually implement what you've designed. But the general answer is no, you cannot export your prototype, but you can share it. Like you can share a link, and for example, like your stakeholder might want to open this link and check out your prototype. So it's not exporting, but you can share it.
Well, maybe it's an idea for another startup to create I don't know, a special plugin that converts Figma prototypes into code. I think that's a good idea. Pretty sure it has already been implemented, but yeah, a girl can dream. So the last questions for today is from Rita. Regarding design systems, are variables incorporated and documented?
Okay, I divide variables into two parts. I have a separate like folder for my variables that are only used for prototypes to not like mess them up with the real variables from the design system. So these are two separate parts, and those variables that I use for prototyping, of course, I don't document them because it's for the demonstration. And the variables that are a part of the design system, those are documented for sure.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you so much for answering such a big amount of questions. Sergey, we thank you. We all thank you once again for giving us such a wonderful presentation, a very hands-on and experience-packed information that will be useful for everyone who has joined. And during Sergey's presentation, we touched upon various topics, and some of them revolved around communication with other departments, especially with the developers. We know that there is like an unspoken rivalry between design and development, but it shouldn't be that way. And I am here to introduce our second speaker, who is going to speak about this as well. Rita Almeida is the lead product designer specializing in UI design systems and user-centered experiences. I'm pretty sure that she's going to tell a little bit more about herself. So without further interruptions, Anna Rita, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Devexperts, for having me. And thank you, Sergey, for such a nice presentation. Let me just start sharing my screen. All right. I hope you can see it now. And I also hope you are hearing me properly.
Everything is all right. We see and hear you well, and the presentation is on screen.
Okay, that's good. Good to know. All right. Yeah, I'm a lead product designer from Porto. So thank you for coming, for hearing what I have to say about communication. And my talk will be about building connection beyond the design team. That means how we can communicate with non-design peers, right? Just to explain a bit of why this topic is so important for me, and also just because it's always good to start with a bit of storytelling, right? I'll show you here a picture of me and my sister when we were kids. So in case you're wondering, I'm the one at the right with the nice glasses. So why this became such an important topic for me? So me and my sister, we were always brilliant students, but we are also very different from each other. So she followed medical school. She's now a doctor, and I went through the arts path, and I became a designer. So as you can imagine, all of our discussions, she was a very logical person, and everything that she would come up would be labeled as logical. But everything that I would do or everything that I would produce, it was much more of a subjective matter. So it could be pretty, it could be beautiful, but it was always subjective. So that's how I start engaging with this kind of conversations, and that's when I start having to explain all my processes and why I was doing what I was doing. So this starts really, really early in my career. So as I was saying, I followed the art path, I studied design, and then I took a specialization in product design. And that's when I got my first job. I landed my first job right after this specialization, and I have to tell you, it was very fun. It was funny, creative. I had a great team. I had a great manager. I was having tons of fun. I first started by doing a lot of TV apps. I did a few of them, and at that time, TV apps, well, it was something very new for me, because when you're studying, even when you're studying product design, usually the examples you might have are, mobile apps, web dashboards, websites, things like that, a bit more conventional, let's say. And while I was designing TV apps, I could use all my sets of tools. So I was using illustration, animation, motion design, interaction design, but at the same time, I had to think about experiences, like how would you use the TV, to navigate, which is it's not such a normal navigation comparing to a phone, obviously, and not that easy also. So yeah, for me, it was a very, very good start. It took me out of my comfort zone for sure. The problems start coming a bit later. So when I see things being delivered to the client, or when I see the things being developed, I was a bit frustrated, and I have to say a bit disappointed, especially when I compared to what I've been, imagining and designing at the time within Sketch. So comparing what I had in my Sketch file with what was being delivered was a bit disappointed. You can imagine what younger Rita thought about the topic. So for me, this was only about these two personas, which, well, weren't my friends, and they were the software developer and the business person. This is an AI generator image of what I used to think about these persons that I had to work with. So they didn't care about what I was doing. They didn't saw my specs within Sketch file. We couldn't communicate. So obviously the results were not great. Just for a bit of context, something that I also think I thought at that time that wasn't working properly, it was, the way we were separated within teams. And so at that time, we were in a centrified model. So we had all the designers at the center that they were, well, basically working for several squads of work, and yeah, different projects, different languages, different teams, different persons. And so you can imagine all of them spoke different languages. And that means you have to adapt to pretty much all of that. And the results were at the time not great. But since the industry moved on, we also moved on to different ways of working. So right now we have different ways of interacting with these teams. We have the designers integrated within the development teams, or at least having a closer collaboration. So you will think the problems are solved, right? So you can, adjust your communication, have a closer relationship with them. There is no way the things could go wrong, right? The problem is that it's not solved. I came to a conclusion after that that the problem is not on the configuration, and definitely it's not on the way these people read or not our Figma or Sketch files at that time. So after a few years in my career, I started developing a few tools, a few mechanisms, so I could handle this problem. I came to the conclusion that I had to adjust my mindset and also my communication to different groups of people. I'll start by the first part of the mindset, okay? So having a good mindset or a proper mindset, for me, it always means keeping a curious mind. Having a curious, being a curious designer, it always helps you through your career, especially if combining to that, you are also a fast learner. For me, for myself, I consider myself a generic, God, I can't say this word right now, but I don't specialize in any path of the design field. That means I understand about design systems, I understand about UX research, I understand, well, I can design end-to-end experiences, but I'm not specialized in any of these fields. At the same time, I also worked in different business areas. So I had worked previously in mobile banking for African countries. I had worked with telecom companies, and right now I'm working within robotics and payload controls. And so you can see most of this knowledge, it's, you can say that it's inside of each box. So mobile banking has anything to do with robotic controls, right? The thing is that most of this knowledge is actually transferable. Whatever I've learned in the beginning of my career, I can still apply nowadays. Being curious is actually what allows me to deep dive into different areas of expertise, and just jumping between those topics and always bring different knowledge from previous experiences. Having this in mind, it's also very good when we are engaging with different people from other areas, keeping in mind that at this time, no one is actually against design. So there are so many examples of why design matters, or the impact of design that design has within organizations, that it's quite difficult to deny it at this point. Well, people might not know how to apply it to their company, or they can think, well, we are not such a custom centric platform or product, so it's not that important. But no one can say, well, that design doesn't actually matter. At the same time, keep in mind that the same way that we are responsible by the UX or the experience of a product, there are other teams who are responsible by the technical part of it. So it is supposed for them to ask questions and to come up with new proposals and things like that. And if a development team don't make questions, you should be worried. That's not normal. Third part, POs and PMs have a lot on their plates, right? So they have to worry about ROI, KPIs, time deliver, roadmaps, things like that. So they do have a lot on their plate, and sometimes it's not like they don't care about the work that we are doing. They are just focused on something else. Having these three ideas in our mind actually help us to get out of our design bubble, right? And it helps us create a bit of empathy towards the other person, which is always a good start to start any kind of conversation. And that brings me to my second point, which is communication. How do we actually communicate with non-design peers or people that are not part of our team? The first part, and it sounds obviously, is listen. Listen carefully and make a lot of questions, ask a lot of questions. Even if they sound silly, it's not your area of expertise, and don't be afraid of asking questions. And this will also help you to the second point, which is actually understand. Understand where the people came from, understand their background, so that will also help you understanding what they need to know about your work, and adapt your work to the person or to the room you're presenting to. So if you have a technical person in front of you, you have to speak about certain things. But if you're speaking to a business person, you have to come up with other kind of metrics, right? So understand where they're coming from, understand what they need from you, and adapt your speech, adapt your content to that audience. And the third part, and this is where I think it's the actually the gold step, it's compromise. So a lot of designers and a lot of teams see the compromise as, you're giving up. I don't see it like that. I think if you present your work, the developers come and present their concerns, then the business guys come and they will also present their concerns. And you can, after all of that, find a compromise. I don't see how that will be bad for your product. So even if your experience is not, the best one or the one you desired, but even if you design the best experience ever, if it takes 3, 4, 5 months to develop compared to the second option that will take only 2 weeks, that might not be the best approach, you see. So we always have to find the balance between what you are proposing and the concerns from the other people. And being able to compromise, I think it's actually the golden stage of every design team. That's something what we should always aim for. And it's obviously not that easy to do. Last part, why does this matter? So I can tell you right now, after 8 years or 9 years of career, that soft skills have a much greater impact than our visual and technical skills. Don't get me wrong, visual and the technical skills are much needed. Actually, they are non-negotiable right now. You always have to understand about design systems, about design tokens, grids, experience, everything. But after certain steps, soft skills is actually what will take your career to a next level. This is very important if you obviously have to deal with the development team. Yeah, you always have to keep a good connection with those. But it's also very important if you are a lead. So if you're managing a team, if you are dealing with stakeholders or clients, and also if you are mentorship junior designers, having these soft skills, it's very good. So you can connect with them. You can, again, adapt your speech to different situations. As a recap, again, keep a curious mind. It's one of the most important characteristics of a designer. And then follow a listen, understand, and compromise approach. If you do all of these 4 things, although this sounds super basic, I can tell that like 75% of your communication issues will be solved. Not everything is that easy as is. Some specific situations might require other kind of adjustments, but I can tell you if you practice this on a daily basis, again, 75% of your problems will be solved. So, yep, that's me. That was my topic for today. You can find all the information about me in my bento. I've written several articles about this communication topic because, as I said, it's something that is very close to my heart. And yeah, that's it. Thank you so much. If someone has questions, I think now it's the time.
Thank you very much, Rita, for your presentation. And although it is not very specific in terms of technical implementation, this is one of the most vital topics that exist today in IT, because it is very hard to build bridges. It's much easier and faster to burn them. So yes, about building the bridges, understanding where you are and who you're talking to is one of the most important things, not only in the professional but also in a daily life. So yeah, from my side, there is only one comment. Thank you very much. This is so impactful, and I really hope that people who are watching us now agree with me. And guys, it is time to ask questions. Please don't be shy and type your questions in the chat box, and I'm going to read them aloud, and Rita will answer them. But while you're typing, I'm going to ask a question myself. Rita, you know that when talking to people who are not designers, who are not in your field, it can be very difficult. And do you remember the most probably frustrating or stressful situation that you have encountered at work, and how did you overcome this situation?
That's a very difficult question. What was the worst situation? Luckily or not, as I told you, through my career, I had the chance of working with different cultures. So when I was working within the mobile payments for the African countries, if I did not have this capability of, listening and understanding the people that were in front of me, there was obviously a cultural shock. And there was no way I could go forward with my usability tests or with my UX research if I was not capable of proper communicate with them, of understanding where they were coming from, and actually compromise some of the things I had planned. That's also how you can, take some decisions on the flight because you can iterate faster. I don't know if this makes sense.
So what was I am personally very interested because I work in an international company, and it is like very important for me to understand what was that cultural shock that you experienced.
All right. Let me see if I can explain it better. So the way we deal with payments and the way we generally deal with money in Europe, I don't need to say particularly in Portugal because I think in Europe this is quite generic, but the way we deal, the way we save, the way we invest, and we see the mobile banking or the banking's account quite similar, let's say. And we do trust the banks, we have general access to the bank. So when I start working for a mobile banking within Kenya, that was not the same reality, although they had access to mobile banking accounts quite earlier compared to what we had. The way that they share their money within them was something that was very odd for me. For example, it was common within the Kenyan people for a village or a group of people to do some savings, and then one of them every month they will be able to withdraw the money from that savings. That's something we can't really relate to, right? That's not that common here, I would say. I never heard of such experience here. So this obviously has to do with their background. And if the only way you find out this is through communication, right? Through interviews, through user testing and that kind of things. And if you can't master these communication skills, it is very, very difficult for you to be sometimes in an interview trying to go deep into some topics if you're not capable of actually listening, if you can't understand not what they are saying because of linguistic problems, but if you can put yourself in the other person's shoes sometimes.
Well, now it's much clearer to me. Thank you very much. So it's not only about the communication, but also about the general curiosity, maybe knowing the legislation or customs and traditions of another party, so you can adjust your work and deliver the best product possible to the target audience. Yeah, this is if I got this right, I think this is one of the most valuable outtakes of the day. So we have a question from Mariana. What books or podcasts can you recommend on this topic? Do you know something specific for designers?
Specifically books about this, doesn't come nothing to my mind, although yes, I've read a few of those about podcasts either. But what I usually do, I do read a lot of Medium articles about the communication topics. Again, that's something that it's a very important topic to me. But that's mostly mostly from where this information came from. Again, pretty much all the topics I've shown here, it's not something new, right? But we are still struggling with that. So there's no need of always be searching for new information. Sometimes you just have to stick to something and start putting something in practice and see what works for us. Because again, listen, understanding, and compromise, it's not something, it does require effort, but you don't really need to, investigate a lot through that. You just need practice. Basically, it's that. Just put it in practice every day and get out of your comfort zone, because in the beginning, yes, will be very uncomfortable.
Yeah. Stop reading from the comfort of your room and get out of the comfort zone and go talk to people. In our digitalized and introverted environment, it sounds like like a scary movie. Like I am broadcasting from my home right now, from the comfort and warmth, and thinking of going somewhere. Although the weather in Portugal is ridiculously good this autumn, yeah, thinking about going out and talking to people about things that they don't understand and maybe I don't understand until the end. It really scares me. So probably it's not about the podcasts and books, although there are many, I'm pretty sure. It's about like having the inner courage to go out there and practice.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. And don't be afraid of being the one in. Sometimes I might be the one in the room that doesn't understand about, I don't know, software architecture or very complex things. When we are, I don't know, doing interviews or facilitating workshops, for example, it's part of our work as product designers. And yes, we do have, again, listening and understanding what the people are saying, but we are not the expertise on the matter. Also, being able to navigate those kind of conversations, it comes with practice. So we should start yesterday.
yeah, this is a very, very good wrap up. We should have started yesterday, but yeah, it's never too late, guys. Please remember. Yaroslav Ivanov gave a comment. Thanks for the presentation, but as for me, great design is not a cute picture, but a solution to business or user problems, sometimes using visual communication. This is a comment, not a
Yeah,
question.
I agree. Yes, definitely. It's not about the visual part of it. But if you don't want to be framed as that, you have to proper communicate your solution because otherwise it might be seen as that. Again, I don't think it's necessary to explain why the design is important in most of the companies. But if you're not able to properly explain your solutions, yes, they might be seen only as visual. And it is necessary to learn how you explain your flows of your experiences, whatever you're proposing to different audiences.
Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure that Yaroslav is going to be the first connection you will see on your LinkedIn today because he keeps on commenting, continuing his thought. A beautiful but complex and inconvenient banking application will not be successful. Therefore, as I understand it, the ability to understand the client and successfully solve his problems is one of the main skills that a designer should have.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
Cannot agree. Cannot agree more. So, another question from Adriana. What was your best lesson from listening to a business client?
Best lesson. That's one. I think most of these of these tools, and it was way easier for me to understand because I was lucky enough to work for again the mobile banking application for Africa because it was clear from me since the beginning that I was not the user. And sometimes, although we always like to keep that in our mind, sometimes we might think we can relate to the use case. In that case, I was 100% sure I couldn't relate to the use case because I couldn't understand some kind of transference that they do. So I really couldn't relate. And so most of the best findings I did was actually during that project again, going there I went to Kenya, to Tanzania to do user interviews and understand how they relate with money. And it was the best thing I could do in early beginning of my career. And because I had to do the extra effort of again learning how to do proper interviews because I was still in the beginning of my career, but also being sure I was actually understanding what they were telling me, and that means understand the cultural value of the money in that region, how they deal with it, and it was very different to what we do here. For example, and something I've learned when I start working the project and also through interviews is that prior to this mobile banking application that I was designing, the people would do long trips to send money to their families. So they will have someone working at the city, and they will have to do long trips to go home and send the money to the family, because it was also very common to only have 2 or 3 people working within the family, and they were the responsible for sending money to their family in the village, and that can take days. African countries do not have the best roads or the best connectivity, so that might take days. And this mobile banking app came and solved some of those issues. And it was curious for me to see how they would make these transactions way faster, and they would actually save days of trips. And I don't think I will ever be in a project that had such a social impact as this one, because you could actually speak with people and they would tell us like, I used to do this every 2 weeks. I will go for my village for 3 or 4 days only to send them money and go back to the city and keep working. And right now they can do that with 2 or 3 clicks, which is also crazy compared to the journey they had previously. Also, something that you can truly relate to is the fact that they do have a lot of social fraud compared to what we have here. So here we are now worried about, cybersecurity and those kind of things. To the market I was working for, the problem was another, was people that, was trying to steal your PIN codes in very, very creative ways, or things like that. It was not the cybersecurity the problem, or the technical engineering. It was much more a social problem. That means we'll have to deep dive and try to understand how they were doing it, what was their motivations, where they were doing it. And that also means adding layers of making actually some of the flows a bit more complicated, or a bit more slower, so that people have actually time to validate the data that they were adding, and do it step by step instead of doing it fast. So they had time to analyze the data they were adding, and understand if they were being frauded. It's something also we can't relate here, because here we want to do transactions fast, right? I want to send you a payment of something, and I just want to type the money I want to send you, adding your phone number, and that's it. For this kind of markets, sometimes you also have to add some entropy to make it safer.
Yes, actually, it's a very, very touching story. And this is how you actually understand the impact of your work, like saving a, a person, like a living, breathing person, 2 days of life just because
every month.
Yeah, just because you designed a great application for eliminating this chore that they are already used to, but don't know how to change. This is like an amazing impact. So congratulations, and thank you very much for sharing your experience with us. As far as I understood, so far there are no more brave people to ask questions, but you have already seen the contact information. You can find Rita on LinkedIn and talk to her about the topic if you have any questions left. And I guess it's time to wrap up our session. And thank you very much for joining this webinar. I really hope that you found out something new and exciting today. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel to revisit this recording or see other recordings. Maybe put a like on this video, or maybe comment it, leaving the impressions that we left today, and follow us on social media, not to miss the announcements about next dxTechTalks. And if you want to be on Sergey's or Rita's place next time, if you have something to say about your area of expertise, if you're interested in promoting your personal brand and joining the dxTechTalk community, not only as a listener, but also as a speaker, please go to dxTechTalk.devexperts.com and apply for a call for papers. We are looking for speakers who from different countries, from different backgrounds, doing different things. Like we have meetups dedicated to front-end development, back-end development, design, accessibility, and quality assurance. So if you are a specialist and you have something to say, we will be more than welcome. You will be more than welcome to join us at dxTechTalk online or offline. I really hope you've had a wonderful time. Have a great evening, and bye-bye.